entering into the spirit of it. The spirit of a thing is what gives it life and movement. Without it, the thing is dead to us. To fully appreciate a work of art, we must enter into the spirit of it and share the mental attitude of its creator. The primal moving power behind life is a primary ether that is not material and which exhibits on a grand scale the faculties of selection and adaptation of means to ends. To access this power, we must enter into the spirit of the whole universe and reproduce it in ourselves as a spring of original life. We are all familiar with the phrase entering into the spirit of things in our everyday lives. The spirit is what gives life and movement to anything, and without it, things would not exist. The works of artists, writers, and musicians are all created from the spirit, and we can only fully appreciate them if we enter into the mental attitude of their creators. This applies to everything in life, including the highest point of all, the spirit of life itself. The question is, what is the nature of the primal moving power behind all life? Science tells us that it is not material, and that there must be some immaterial power that creates and guides the universe. This power exhibits the faculties of selection and adaptation of means to ends, and thus distributes energy and life in accordance with a recognizable scheme of cosmic progression. It is the primary originating power that we mean when we speak of the spirit, and it is into this spirit of the whole universe that we must enter if we would reproduce it as a spring of original life in ourselves. The method of entering into this spirit is the same method by which all scientific advances are made. First, observing how a certain law works under the conditions spontaneously provided by nature, then carefully considering what principle this spontaneous working indicates, and lastly, deducing from this how the same principle would act under specially selected conditions not spontaneously provided by nature. We must contemplate the spirit of life where it is to be found, and not where it is not. We start our studies by considering the cosmic creation, for it is there that we find the life spirit working through untold ages. If we could only make the spirit of life personally within ourselves what it is in itself, the magnum opus would be accomplished. The action of the originating mind is according to types which include multitudes of individuals. At the human level, this type is man, not associated with particular circumstances, but as existing in the absolute ideal. In proportion as we learn to dissociate our conception of ourselves from particular circumstances and to rest upon our absolute nature as reflections of the divine ideal, we reflect back into the divine imagination its original conception of itself as expressed in generic or typical man. By a natural law of cause and effect, the individual who realizes this mental attitude enters permanently into the spirit of life, and it becomes a perennial fountain of life springing up spontaneously within him. This is what is meant by the esoteric doctrine of the octave, and it affords the requisite center for a new departure of the creative spirit. Man is a microcosm, our universe in miniature, and by entering into the spirit of life, we can become the image and likeness of God. Individuality. Individuality is necessary to complement the universal spirit, and finding the true relationship between the individual and the universal originating spirit is the problem of life. The universal spirit is characterized by life, love, and beauty, and it expresses itself through individuals on the plane of the particular. The reproduction of life, love, and beauty of the universal spirit is not visible in every human being because of the law of consciousness, which requires an individual to be an independent source of action, with the option of acting positively or negatively. Individuality is essential to complement the universal spirit. The key to life is finding the true relationship between the individual and the universal originating spirit. To do so, we must first understand the essence of the universal spirit, which is life, love, and beauty. The primary motive of the universal spirit is to express the life, love, and beauty it embodies. The universal spirit can only act on the individual level by becoming the individual, and this is where individuality comes in. The individual must have the freedom to choose to withhold expression of the universal spirit, as this freedom allows for a true realization of livingness. If every individual expressed the life, love, and beauty of the universal spirit, we would not have unique individuals and we would lack a solid foundation for life. Consciousness is key to realizing life, and we can only be conscious of something if we realize a certain relationship between it and ourselves. This self-recognition is what constitutes our realization of life. The law of consciousness explains why every individual does not express the life, love, and beauty of the universal spirit. It is because they do not understand the law of their own individuality and perceive it as a limitation instead of a law of liberty. They do not recognize the starting point of the creative process within themselves and look to the mechanical side of things for the basis of their reasoning about life. This leads them to believe that life is limited, and they ridicule the idea of transcending it. However, this negative argument is fallacious because it assumes that the law of limitation is essential in all grades of being. The principle of the law of affirmative working needs to be specialized under higher conditions than those spontaneously presented by nature, and this can only be done by introducing the personal element, an individual intelligence capable of comprehending the principle. Man in his inmost nature is the product of the divine mind, which images forth an image of itself on the plane of the relative as the complement to its own sphere of the absolute. We must go to the inmost principle in ourselves, which is made in the image and likeness of God, instead of to the outer vehicles that externalize it as instruments through which to function on the various planes of being. Man's place in the cosmic order is that of a distributor of the divine power, subject to the inherent law of the power which he distributes. We see one instance of this in ordinary science, in the fact that we never create force. All we can do is to distribute it. In the same way, man distributes the power of the universal mind, which takes particular forms through the particular mind of the individual. Following this method, we shall grow more and more into the habit of looking to mental attitude as the key to our progress in life, knowing that everything else must come out of that. We shall further discover that our mental attitude is eventually determined by the way in which we regard the divine mind. When we do this, we will be able to specialize the law of our own being in ways that we have only just begun to understand, and when we behold him as he is, we will become like him. The law of the relation between the universal and the individual minds is one of reciprocal action. If we grasp the fact of reciprocity, we will understand why the individual falls short of expressing the fullness of life that the spirit is, and he can attain to the fullness of that expression. The new thought and the new order. The specialization of universal principles consists of making them produce an effect they could not produce under generic conditions, achieved through the conscious arrangement of things in a new order to produce a new result. The scientific method is to find the affirmative factor in any existing combination and provide suitable conditions for it to express itself more fully. The required conditions for translating the generic operation of the spirit into a specialized individual operation is a new way of thinking, in accordance with the principle that thought and feeling are the causes and forms, and conditions are the effects. All originating spirit is, and its relation to the individual are universal principles that apply to all of nature and all people, and recognizing them is essential to progress. The process of specialization involves consciously arranging things in a new order to allow a principle to act in a less limited way. This involves selecting suitable conditions that enable a natural law or principle to produce an effect that it could not produce under simply generic conditions. Specialization does not involve introducing new elements, but rather making new combinations of elements that are always present. The power of intelligence is necessary to provide specific conditions for the operation of universal principles to bring about new results beyond our past experiences. The scientific method of inquiry involves identifying the affirmative factor in any existing combination and recognizing what conditions are necessary to allow it to express itself more fully. The primary affirmative factor in the creation is spirit, which is the invisible power that concentrates the primordial ether into forms and endows those forms with various modes of motion. The required conditions for translating the generic operation of the spirit into a specialized individual operation involve a new way of thinking that concurs with the essential forward movement of the creative spirit itself. This implies an entire reversal of our old conceptions, which took forms and conditions as the starting point of our thought and inferred that they are the causes of mental states. Instead, we must recognize that thought and feeling are the causes, and forms and conditions are the effects. New Thought is not the name of a particular sect, but rather the essential factor by which our own future development is to be carried on. It involves seeing the relation of things in a new order and recognizing the true order of the creative process. The originating spirit is a forming power throughout nature, and if we would specialize it, we must learn to trust its formative quality when operating from its new starting point in ourselves. The individual's part is to provide a concrete center around which the divine energies can play. We exercise a force of attraction upon the generic order of being in accordance with the innate pattern of our particular individuality. By realizing the law of this relation, we are attracted towards the divine along the lines of least resistance, which are most natural to our special bent of mind. This leads to a reciprocal action between the universal mind and the individual mind, and our desires should not be directed to the acquisition of particular things, but to the reproduction in ourselves of particular phases of the spirit's activity. We must follow the subjective or creative process with an objective or constructive process to reach the stage of completed work. This is the part taken by the individual, and it is how they become a distributing center of the divine energy. They neither lead it like a blind force, nor are under a blind, unreasoning impulsion from it. They receive guidance because they seek guidance, and they both seek and receive according to a law that they can recognize. The more intimate their knowledge of this law of reciprocity becomes, the more they find that it leads to liberty, which is the key to enfranchisement of body, mind, and circumstances. The life of the spirit. A new order of thought is necessary to specialize the relation between the individual and the all-embracing spirit, implying a power, an individual who understands the power, and a method of applying the power deduced from understanding its nature. The individual is a distributor, not the original creator, and the power to distribute is the originating spirit, seeking for expression through the perfect livingness of the spirit, found through the individual's renewed mode of thought. Our thoughts and feelings will take form from that source from which we allow them to receive suggestion, and to get out of the circle of limitation, we need to be receptive to the forming influence of the universal spirit into our mental substance. We have explored essential truths in a particular sequence: the essence of the originating spirit, the relationship between the individual and the all-encompassing spirit, and the method of specializing this connection for more significant outcomes. Understanding these principles is crucial before delving deeper into their practical application. It is essential to recognize that this application must be personal, as the individual is the channel through which the higher specialization of power occurs. However, we must not fall into the trap of believing that the individual creates this creative force. Rather, our role is to distribute, not create. Keeping this in mind will help avoid confusion. What is the power we distribute? The originating spirit itself. This spirit seeks expression through the perfect livingness of the individual, actualized via our renewed way of thinking. In our previous understanding, life was associated with the physical body, but we now know that life encompasses more than the physical. The greater includes the lesser, and physical life is one mode of its manifestation. The true order acknowledges the physical life but places in it the correct position within the greater scheme. With the realization of the creative process, we see that the originating life is not physical, but rather consists of thought and feeling. It is through these thoughts and feelings that we become the vehicles for the life of the spirit. As we grasp the idea of the spirit as the great forming power, we shall seek the fountainhead of form and power within it. By doing so, we will begin to transfer our thoughts and feelings to the source, allowing them to be molded by the spirit. In turn, our external conditions, both in our bodies and our circumstances, will be shaped by our thoughts and feelings. The key to establishing this relationship is to adopt a receptive mental attitude towards the universal spirit, intending to receive its forming influence into our mental substance. The presence of a clear and definite intention is crucial in differentiating our mental receptivity from merely absorbing random influences. Through this personal connection with the life of the spirit, our sphere of influence expands. We must trust the spirit to take the initiative, knowing that its inherent nature works towards the expansion of our individual lives. When we recognize the spirit as the source of both form and power, we can rest in the joyful anticipation of greater things to come, unfolding through a natural law of growth. The only condition attached to this forward movement is our cooperation with the spirit. This cooperation involves making the best use of current conditions and trusting the spirit of increase to express itself through us. Such a mindset relieves us of worry and anxiety, allowing us to work more efficiently. By recognizing the life and law of the spirit as one and the same, we give them a new starting point through our own mentality. As we contemplate the life, love, and beauty of the originating spirit and affirm that we already express these qualities in our thoughts and actions, our path becomes clear. Though the path may begin narrow and humble, it continually expands and ascends, reflecting the infinite and limitless nature of the life of the spirit. Alpha and Omega. Alpha and Omega refers to the first and last stages of causation from an idea to its manifestation in form. The already existent nature of the thing in the thought suggests the presence of the universal principle at the human level. Recognition of the divine ideal of man is necessary to facilitate the evolutionary process by conscious cooperation with the creative spirit, and it takes place through the laws of our own mentality. In the beginning and the end, the origin and the culmination, the essence of creation lies. It is the unfolding of causation from the first spark to the final realization. Whether it is the birth of a cosmos or the creation of an elegant garment, the journey commences with an idea, a thought, and culminates in the manifestation of that thought in form. Between these 2 points, a multitude of stages emerge. The crucial insight here is that the final form already exists, in essence, with the original thought. The Omega is harbored within the Alpha, akin to the Pythagorean principle that all numbers emerge from unity and return to it. This principle of the existence of the final form within the thought is the key to understanding the grand design of the cosmic architect. It is a universal principle that operates across all scales and subjects. And when we apply this principle to the most intimate of subjects, ourselves, we begin to explore the meaning of Alpha and Omega within the human being. The figure in St. John's vision speaks of Alpha and Omega as transcendent yet essentially human, hinting at the presence of this universal principle within our very selves. This transcendent Omega, the divine ideal, exists within every one of us, eternally true and whole. And as things take shape through the laws of growth and the unfolding of time and space, the expression of the divine thought within the human form becomes a matter of gradual development. To facilitate this evolutionary process, we must consciously cooperate with the creative spirit. This begins with recognizing the divine ideal of humanity and following the pattern set before us. The creative action of the spirit works within us through the laws of our own mentality. The divine ideal can only manifest in our lives to the extent we recognize its existence in the divine mind. Thus, the mirror of our minds reflects the divine ideal, shaping our external reality. As we grasp this truth of the creative process, we become the individual reflections of our realization of God relative to ourselves. Through this process, St. Paul speaks of Christ being formed in us and of being renewed in knowledge after the image of our Creator. This process is a natural result of understanding the supreme law of our own being, rooted in the creative and emotive power of thought and feeling. The images in the mind of the spirit are necessarily generic, encompassing the perfect development of the human race. Our evolution as creative centers, bringing forth new laws and conditions, depends on our realization of the divine archetypes within the divine mind. Here we discover an infinite and glorious personality, the Alpha and Omega of humanity, which becomes active and specific through a personal relationship with the individual. Our recognition of this divine personality and its pulsating life leads us to be guided by the Spirit, and we begin to see the Alpha and Omega of the divine ideal reproduced in ourselves. As St. John encapsulates, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it does not yet appear what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." Thus, the divine principle of Alpha and Omega is at work within each of us, guiding our evolution towards realizing the divine ideal through the power of thought, feeling, and the creative spirit. The creative power of thought. Thought possesses creative power and is the only possible source from which the existing creation could have ever come into manifestation. Adverse conditions exist because our thought has been used invertedly and taken external facts as the starting point rather than the inherent nature of mental power. By realizing that our own individuality is a thought in the divine mind which is able to perpetuate itself, we can draw creative power from the universal mind and mold specific conditions out of the universal substance. All creations have originated from thought or mental action alone, and our minds are an expression of divine thought. This implies that our thinking capacity is a product of the parent mind, but we must question whether our thinking possesses the same creative potential as the originating mind. The entire creative process involves the universal spirit constantly seeking expression through individual and specific forms. This means that if thinking power is to be expressed, it must do so by reflecting the thinking power that is already present within the originating spirit. Then can it be considered thinking power rather than just a mechanism? This is why humans are said to be created in the image and likeness of a higher power. By accepting this as an undeniable truth, we can develop a strong foundation for drawing many essential conclusions. However, if our thoughts hold creative power, why do we face unfavorable circumstances? The answer lies in our misuse of this power. We have based our thinking on external facts, which has led to the recreation of similar situations and perpetuated the cycle of limitations. Our subconscious mind is highly susceptible to suggestions, making us vulnerable to negative influences from those unfamiliar with positive principles. As a result, collective beliefs in our immediate environment's thought currents reinforce our inverted thinking. Thus, it's no wonder that our thoughts' creative power, when misdirected, has generated the limitations we experience. The solution is to change our thinking approach, focusing on our inherent mental power instead of external facts. With this understanding, we can explore how to strengthen and expand our power. Our minds are thoughts of the parent mind, and as long as this thought endures, we will exist, for we are the embodiment of that thought. By continually thinking this thought, it remains present in the divine mind, fulfilling the conditions needed for the continuation of individual life. This concept can be likened to a self-influencing dynamo where the interaction between magnetism and electric current creates a more robust output, or to two mirrors reflecting each other, with the word life appearing in both. While these analogies are imperfect, they help illustrate the idea that our individuality as a thought in the divine mind perpetuates and expands by thinking of itself. When we recognize this and understand that all external conditions, including our bodies, are created by thoughts, we find ourselves positioned between two infinities, the infinite of mind and the infinite of substance. We can draw from both and shape specific conditions out of universal substance using the creative power we obtain from the universal mind. However, it's crucial to remember that this is not done by imposing personal will upon the substance, which would lead to errors and inversions. Instead, we should view our minds as channels for the universal mind to act upon substances in a specific way, influenced by our thought patterns. If we consistently focus on principles rather than specific things, acknowledging that principles are simply the divine mind at work, they will naturally develop and result in corresponding facts. This aligns with the teaching that seeking the kingdom of God and His righteousness will bring all things to us. We must always be aware that our thoughts' creative power stems from our minds being a thought of the divine mind. Our increasing life force and creative potential directly correlate with our understanding of our connection to the parent mind. This concept forms the basis of the biblical notion of sonship and the idea of the Christ. These principles aren't mere fantasies, they are expressions of rigorous scientific principles applied to the deepest issues of individual life. They assert that each person's world, whether in the physical or spiritual realm, is inevitably created by their own consciousness. In turn, one's mode of consciousness will be influenced by their perception of their relationship with the divine mind. A lack of awareness of the divine mind will result in the absence of light and color, while recognizing our inherent connection with the all-originating spirit will give rise to forms of beauty and enlightenment. The primary objective of thought in each of us is to help us become consciously aware that we are children of the Almighty. By acknowledging our divine origin, we can understand that we can never be truly separated from the parent mind, which is constantly seeking expression through us. Any perceived separation is due to our misunderstanding of the innate connection between the universal and individual aspects of existence. The profound lesson of our inherent relationship with the divine mind has been eloquently presented by the great teacher through the parable of the prodigal son. The Great Affirmative. The Great Affirmative appears in two modes, cosmic and individual, but in essence, it is the same in both and works from different standpoints. The Great Affirmative is the perception that God is one and that this one finds its center in ourselves. The principle of creation from a single power is vital for the Great Affirmative to work through us, and the importance of this principle will become clear as we realize more fully the results proceeding from the assumption of the opposite principle. The Great Affirmative appears in two modes, cosmic and individual. Though the essence remains the same, the perspective and context differ. It represents the principle of existence in contrast to non-existence. To understand this idea, we need to grasp the concept of that which is not, which is more than just non-existence. It refers to conditions. The lesser affirmative focuses on specific conditions, while the greater affirmative encompasses the origin of these conditions. At the cosmic level, it represents the power of the spirit that gives birth to creation, and at the individual level, it operates through the human mind, which shares the same quality as the divine mind. The spirit achieves this through the same method as in the original creation, creating something from nothing. This enables it to bypass limitations and establish a new creative starting point. The Bible emphasizes the concept of monogenesis, or creation from a single power, as opposed to a dualistic system. Recognizing this single creative power in ourselves is key to our progress. The Great Affirmative in essence states that God is one, and this oneness is centered in ourselves. Realizing this leads to a new creation within and from ourselves, operating through a simple principle of unity. The spirit moves simultaneously in the macrocosm of the universe and in the microcosm of the individual. Recognizing this unity allows individuals to trust the harmonious action of the spirit within and around them. As a result, individuals become specialized centers through which creative forces can flow. This creates a unique individuality capable of bridging the universal spiritual power and the manifestation of the relative in time and space. By understanding the oneness of the spirit, individuals aim to focus on the forward movement of the spirit rather than external conditions. Instead of asserting our limited personality, we affirm that the great I Am expresses itself in us and through us. This makes us realize our true position as subordinate creative centers, independent of existing conditions but also subordinate to the divine spirit in its grand forward movement. The Great Affirmative allows us to be children of the great King, living in obedience to the power above us while exercising this power over the world of secondary causation below us. In this way, each person embraces the mission of the I Am. Christ, the fulfilling of the law. The principle of fulfilling the law means bringing out all the possibilities hidden in it, which is the method that has brought forth all the advances of material civilization. The Bible teaching concerning Christ is about the complete manifestation of the law of individuality, which is a teaching based on spiritual and mental law that recognizes the potentialities of the law inherent in everyone. The new thought is the attainment by the Spirit of a new starting point, the esoteric doctrine of the octave, which starts a new series reduplicating the starting point of the previous series at a different level, and which provides new thought conditions enabling the Spirit to carry on its creative work from a new standpoint, that of the individual. Don't assume that I've come to destroy the law or the prophets. I haven't come to destroy them, but to fulfill them. Matthew chapter 5, verse 17. Christ is the end of the law so that there may be righteousness for everyone who believes. Romans chapter 10, verse 4. If these words are merely an expression of narrow-minded superstition, they hold no value. However, if they represent a significant principle, it's important for us to explore what that principle is. Fulfilling something means realizing its full potential and bringing out all the possibilities hidden within it. This is the same approach that has driven the progress of our material civilization. The laws of nature remain the same as they were during the time of our ancient ancestors, but now we've uncovered more of their potential, and as we continue to do so, we keep moving forward. Shouldn't we apply this same approach to ourselves, discovering the untapped potential within the laws of our own existence? The Bible teaches that the complete expression of individuality is the ultimate goal of Christ's message. This teaching is rooted in spiritual and mental laws, recognizing that results can only be produced through the operation of sufficient causes. Christ is presented as both an explanation of these causes and a demonstration of their full effects. This teaching is based on universal laws, which means that their potential is inherent in each person. There are no special laws for anyone, but anyone can specialize these laws by understanding and using them more effectively. The teachings about Christ in the scriptures help us achieve this. Previously, we discussed that the same creative spirit that formed the world is also the source of our own individuality. This spirit is always ready to continue the creative process from an individual standpoint when the right thought conditions are provided. By understanding the relationship between Christ and the originating mind or Father, we can adopt a thought standard that will inevitably bring out our hidden potential. The Christ idea as a universal principle is an idea that can be reproduced in individual minds, explaining St. Paul's concept of Christ being formed within us. The realization of our potential from an individual standpoint comes from understanding that the same creative spirit that exists within the cosmos is within ourselves. The story of Eden. The story of Eden contains the entire Bible and the history of the world, past, present, and future in allegorical form. The knowledge of good and evil is a destructive principle because it presupposes that good is limited by evil and requires a continual combat against every imaginable form of evil. Life is the primary movement of the spirit, and to create something entirely new, we must realize an underlying unity, which is the root of life, and there is only one force to be considered, and that is absolutely good. The entire Bible and the world's history, past, present, and future, are embedded within the story of Eden. This tale is an allegorical representation of the continuous development of certain fundamental principles. Origen, an early Christian theologian, questioned the literal interpretation of the story, suggesting that there is a hidden meaning beneath the surface. Following Origen's idea, let's explore the hidden meaning behind the two trees in the story. On the surface, there are two roots, one symbolizing life and the other representing death, each producing opposite results. The tree of death is marked by the knowledge of good and evil, recognizing the existence of opposing forces and necessitating an understanding of their relationship to maintain balance. This idea seems reasonable at first glance, but upon closer examination, it reveals its destructive nature. It assumes that good can only be attained by eliminating corresponding evils, which turns life into a continuous battle against every form of evil imaginable. The problem lies in the belief that life can be generated through intellectual processes. However, as previously discussed, life originates from the movement of the spirit in both the cosmos and the individual. Intellectual knowledge is important, but it is not the source of life. It is an effect, not the cause. Intellectual study involves the analysis of laws that arise from the relationships between things, assuming that these things and their laws already exist. This approach does not account for the creation of entirely new things or ideas, which is the essence of the creative process. To escape this chaos created by the infinite complexity of relationships, we need to recognize the underlying unity behind all things. This unity is the great affirmative principle, without which nothing could exist. If we trust this principle to provide both power and form for manifestation, we can rely on this single force for creating anything. Spirit produces substance from its own essence, and the substance takes form according to the movement of the spirit. Understanding that this same creative process occurs within our own minds, we can deliberately create by focusing on the good we intend to bring into existence. This requires the belief in a single, life-giving power that is inherently good. If a destructive, self-originating power existed, creation would never have been possible, as the positive and negative powers would cancel each other out. Our very existence is proof of the singular and good nature of the originating power. By focusing on the good we wish to create, we are not studying the evil that may arise from existing or future circumstances. Instead, we concentrate on the creative process and trust that it will naturally produce new laws and conditions. The ultimate law is the production of something from nothing, ex nihilo, through the movement of the spirit, and all other laws are measurements of the relationships that arise when things come into existence. When we grasp this infallible principle of the creative law, we can move forward confidently, knowing that the creative principle is working through us to bring about harmony in all aspects of our lives. The Spirit thinks through our thoughts, but His thoughts are more profound than ours. Our thoughts will be clear and focused, but we may not always understand the greater thought that influences our smaller ones. The hidden meaning of the two trees in Eden, the garden of the soul, is the distinction between knowledge based on comparisons between conditions and knowledge that stems from the life that gives rise to and controls those conditions. It's crucial to remember that controlling conditions doesn't involve forceful self-assertion, but rather conscious unity with the all-creating spirit that operates silently and effectively on the principles of life, love, and beauty. The worship of Ishi. Two biblical passages reveal a change of name that symbolizes a change in the relationship between the worshiper and the divine being. The change from Baali to Ishi indicates an important alteration in the relation between the divine being and the worshiper, reflecting a new mode of looking at the divine. The true relation between the originating spirit and the individual mind, called the mystical marriage, is one of mutual action and reaction, characterized by perfect reciprocity, love, and personal intercourse. In Hosea chapter 2 verse 16, there is a fascinating statement. "On that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, you will no longer call me my master." This is paired with Isaiah chapter 62 verse 4. "You will be called Hephzibah, and your land Beulah, for the Lord delights in you, and your land will be married." Both passages mention a name change, signifying a change in condition that corresponds with the change in name. The shift from Baali to Ishi represents a significant change in the relationship between the divine and the worshiper. Since the divine cannot change, the altered relationship must be due to a change in the worshiper's perspective, stemming from a new way of understanding the divine. Baali means Lord, and Ishi means husband, symbolizing the transition of a female slave who is freed and marries her former master. This is an excellent analogy. The individual soul is symbolically feminine in relation to the universal spirit because its role is to receive and give form. This is an inherent part of the creative process. However, the individual's development as a unique medium for the universal spirit depends entirely on their understanding of their relationship with it. If the individual sees the divine as an arbitrary power, like a slave owner, they will feel like a slave, driven by an unknown force without understanding its purpose. They might worship such a god, but their worship will be based on fear and ignorance, and there will be no personal interest in the matter except to avoid punishment. This kind of worshiper would prefer to escape their divinity, and their worship, when analyzed, is more like disguised hatred. This is a natural outcome of worship based on unexplained traditions rather than understandable principles, and it is the opposite of the worship in spirit and truth that Jesus speaks of as true worship. As the individual begins to understand the true nature of the relationship with the universal mind, they will discover it to be a relationship of mutual action and reaction, perfectly symbolized by the bond between a loving husband and wife. Everything is done out of love, not compulsion, and both parties have complete trust in one another, being equally indispensable to each other. This understanding is the foundation of the mystical marriage, where the two become one. In reality, they always were one, but the recognition of this fact makes it a practical reality for the individual. The names Ishi and Hephzibah represent this unique, personal, and individual relationship between the spirit and the individual. As the individual awakens to their oneness with the spirit also awakens to this unity. It becomes aware of itself through the individual's consciousness, resolving the paradox of individual self-recognition by the universal spirit. This understanding allows for the exercise of new creative power and the progression of the cosmic creative process. It is crucial to remember that this relationship is entirely natural and does not require any abnormal conditions. By living directly from the spirit, the individual will find that things become more clearer on both the inner and outer planes. The whole world is the temple of the spirit, and the individual is its sanctuary. By trusting the spirit to work according to its nature, the individual will increasingly enter into the new order that emerges from the thought of the new one who says, "Behold, I make all things new." The shepherd and the stone. The metaphor of the shepherd and the sheep in the Bible is combined with the metaphor of the stone, and it points to the building of an edifice whose stones are persons, each taking their more or less conscious part in the construction. The universal purpose of the divine order can only be accomplished through the instrumentality of specific means, and it is the spread of this individual cooperation that the forward movement of the spirit is leading us to. The approach of the new order is making itself vaguely felt, and the realization of the principle of the shepherd and the stone can lead to personal and practical benefits arising from the forward movement of the spirit. The imagery of the shepherd and sheep is frequently found in the Bible, symbolizing guidance, protection, and nurturing of individuals and groups. Additionally, the Bible combines the shepherd metaphor with that of the stone, although they may initially seem unrelated. The Old Testament, Genesis chapter 49 verse 24, refers to the shepherd as the stone of Israel, and Jesus identifies himself as both the good shepherd and the stone which the builders rejected. Combining these two metaphors, we can understand that a shepherd represents personal care and greater intelligence, while a stone represents construction, measurement, and growth according to a plan. This leads to the idea of a structure being built with people as the building blocks growing from within under the guidance of a supreme wisdom that directs human development. This divine order in human affairs allows us to consciously cooperate for our personal benefit and contribute to the grand scheme of human evolution. The ultimate goal is to establish a principle of harmony in all people, and those who begin to grasp this principle can experience specialized guidance that leads to higher development. The universal purpose can only be accomplished through specific means. This means that the universal law must work on an individual level for further development to occur. The spreading of this individual cooperation is what the spiritual movement is leading us to, as mentioned in Daniel's prophecy about the stone that fills the entire earth. Daniel chapter 2, verse 34 and 44. Daniel interprets the stone as a symbol of a spiritual kingdom, and the connection between the stone and the shepherd implies that the kingdom of the stone is also the kingdom of the shepherd. Jesus emphasized that this kingdom is an inner kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Therefore, we should seek its foundation in a spiritual principle or mental law inherent in all people, awaiting development through greater alignment with its requirements. The emergence of this new order is vaguely felt everywhere, causing unrest due to its uncertain nature. However, students of spiritual law should not worry, as they know that they will be included harmoniously in any development. This is the practical benefit of understanding the dual metaphor of the shepherd and the stone. We can trust that we are cared for by a compassionate shepherd and shaped by a wise master builder. The principle of the shepherd and the stone has been present throughout history, manifesting in different ways. Studying these manifestations will reveal the workings of the same principle of spiritual law that we can use for our own personal evolution, adding interest to life and introducing us to a future not limited by time. The first stage in the creative process is always rooted in feeling, a reaching out by the Spirit in a particular direction. We can observe the early development of the shepherd and stone principle in a nomadic race that built monuments of stone symbolizing their religious beliefs. As we progress, we find connections between different branches of this race, with historical evidence growing more complex and stronger. Countries such as Ireland, Greece, Egypt, India, Palestine, and Persia share similar traditions and even names, pointing to a connection between these seemingly distant lands. This exploration reveals the specialization of universal laws on a large scale, which we must also achieve individually. The nation or person who realizes the true principle of the shepherd and the stone comes under special divine guidance and protection, not due to favoritism, but through the operation of the law itself. They learn to harness its higher possibilities, becoming part of the great shepherd's flock in the great architect's building and growing in new ways. In conclusion, the promises contained in the Bible, both national and personal, are statements of the universal law of cause and effect applied to our innermost principles. Therefore, it is a figurative expression of a great truth when the psalmist says, "The Lord is my shepherd, and thou art my God and the rock of my salvation."